Most people think they need a lot of money to start investing. That is the first mistake. The second mistake is thinking it does not matter when you start. And the third mistake, the one almost nobody talks about, is believing that the amount is the point. It is not. Here is what is actually happening when someone commits to putting $100 a month into the market, and why, for a staggering number of Americans, that one small decision ends up being the most financially consequential thing they ever do. Not because $100 is a lot of money, because of what time does to it. Let us start with something uncomfortable. The median American household has less than $5,000 in savings, not invested, saved, sitting somewhere. That is the median, meaning half the country has less than that. And when surveys ask people why they are not investing, the answer is almost always the same: I do not have enough money to start. Which is fascinating, because that answer is both completely understandable and almost entirely wrong. $100 a month is roughly $3.30 a day. It is one skipped lunch, one less streaming service, one fewer tank of gas per month if you drive less. We are not talking about deprivation. We are talking about a number so small that most financial advisors would not even bother mentioning it in a client meeting. And yet, if a 25-year-old in America starts putting $100 a month into a basic index fund today and never changes that amount, never gets fancy, never picks stocks, never calls a broker, by the time they are 65, they will have contributed $48,000 of their own money. That is it, $48,000. But the account will not have $48,000 in it. It will likely have somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000, maybe more. That gap, the chasm between what you put in and what comes out, is the entire story. And most people have no real intuition for how it works, which is why they keep waiting for the right time, some Chapter 7, to start, which never comes. So let us talk about the mechanism, the actual engine underneath this. It is called compound growth, and you have heard of it. You have probably even nodded along when someone explained it at some point. But here is the thing about compound growth. Hearing about it and feeling it are two completely different experiences. When you put $100 into an investment account this month, that money earns a return. Let us say the market has a decent year, and that return is around 8% annually. That is roughly in line with the long-run historical average of the S&P 500 after inflation is stripped out. 8% annually means your $100 grows to $108 by next year. Fine, not exactly life-changing. But here is where it gets strange. Next year, you add another $100. Now you have roughly $208 working. The year after, another $100. Now you have around $324 because the returns are now being earned on the returns. The machine is feeding itself. In year 1, the growth is almost invisible. In year 5, it is mildly interesting. In year 15, it starts to feel significant. And somewhere around year 25, you stop doing math and start doing philosophy. Because at that point, the market is adding more to your account every single month than you are. You are contributing 100. The compounding is contributing 150, then 200, then 300. You are now a minority shareholder in your own wealth-building process, which is exactly where you want to be. This is not a trick. There is no fine print. It is just math operating over time. The problem is that humans are genuinely terrible at intuiting exponential curves. We think in straight lines. We assume that if something doubles in 20 years, it will take another 20 to double again. But it does not work like that. The second doubling comes faster. So does the third. The curve bends upward in a way that consistently surprises even people who understand it intellectually, Now here is where the story gets a little darker, because everything above assumes you actually start, and that assumption is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Consider two people, call them Daniel and Sarah. Both are 25 years old. Both have access to the same basic index fund with the same average return. Daniel starts investing $100 a month at age 25. He does this for 10 years, then stops completely. He puts in $12,000 total and never adds another cent. He just lets it sit. Sarah waits until she is 35 to start. Then she invests $100 a month every single month for 30 years straight, all the way to 65. She puts in $36,000, 3 times as much as Daniel. When they both turn 65, Daniel, who stopped contributing decades earlier, ends up with more money. Not a little more, meaningfully more. That result sounds wrong. It sounds like a math error. People hear it and immediately look for the catch. But there is no catch. It is just the compounding window. Daniel gave his money 10 extra years to work, and those 10 years at the beginning, when the money is young and has the longest runway, are worth more than 30 years of contributions that started a decade late. This is the uncomfortable math. The thing that should be printed somewhere and handed to every 22-year-old on their first day of work. The most expensive financial decision you will ever make is waiting. Not a bad investment, not high fees, not even inflation. Waiting. Let us zoom out for a second, because this is where a lot of these conversations go sideways. At this point in a video like this, the tone usually shifts. Someone starts talking about passive income and financial freedom and retiring at 45. It gets aspirational. The music swells slightly. That is not what this is. $100 a month is not a path to early retirement unless you earn very little to begin with, or you are incredibly disciplined about everything else in your financial life simultaneously. What it is, and what it actually is a meaningful hedge against a specific and very real catastrophe. The catastrophe of arriving at 65 with nothing. Right now, roughly half of Americans between the ages of 55 and 66 have zero retirement savings. None. They are planning to live on Social Security, which currently pays an average of around $1,900 per month to retirees. That is not poverty technically, but it is not comfortable either, especially if you have rent and medical costs and a body that is starting to have opinions about stairs. $100 a month, started at 25, does not solve everything. But it builds something. It builds a cushion, a floor, a number that exists when you need it to. That is the real value proposition here. Not getting rich, not beating the market, not finding the next great stock. Avoiding the very specific financial vulnerability that quietly swallows the second half of millions of American lives. Now for the part most people skip. Even $100 a month inside the wrong structure can underperform significantly. The account type matters, the fees matter, the investment choice matters. None of these things are complicated, but they are easy to get wrong if nobody ever explained them. First, the account. If your employer offers a 401k with any kind of match, that is the first place your $100 should go. A 50% match on contributions up to 6% of your salary means that on your first dollar, you are already getting a 50% return before the market does anything. No investment in the world reliably does that. Ignore the match, and you are voluntarily leaving compensation on the table. If no employer match exists, a Roth IRA is usually the next best option for most people under a certain income threshold. You contribute after-tax money, and everything it grows into, decades of compounding, comes out tax-free in retirement. On $100 a month over 40 years, that tax treatment is worth a genuinely large amount of money. Second, the fees. This is where people quietly hemorrhage returns without realizing it. A mutual fund charging 1.5% annually does not sound expensive. It sounds like barely anything. But over 40 years, that fee, compounding against you the same way returns compound for you, can consume somewhere between 20 and 30% of your final balance. A broad market index fund from a major provider typically charges somewhere between 0.03 and 0.2%. That difference, compounded over decades, is not trivial. It is the difference between a number that makes you feel secure and a number that makes you feel genuinely fine. Third, the investment choice itself. For most people, most of the time, a simple total market index fund or an S&P 500 index fund is the correct answer. Not because it is exciting, because it is not exciting. Because excitement in investing is usually a tax you pay for doing something unnecessary. The history of individual stock picking by retail investors is not inspiring. The math shows, consistently, that active traders underperform passive index investors over long periods. Not all of them, not always. But, on average, reliably, by a meaningful margin. The boring path has better numbers. That is an uncomfortable fact for an industry that profits from complexity. There is one more thing worth saying before the end. Everything above assumes a relatively stable market over a long horizon. The historical evidence supports that assumption for U.S. markets over 30 and 40-year windows. But history is not a guarantee. Markets go down. Sometimes they go down hard and stay down for years. Recessions happen, depressions, theoretically, can happen again. A person who started investing in January of 2007 and checked their account in March of 2009 saw roughly half their money gone, on paper, temporarily as it turned out, but real enough to feel in the moment. What do you do when that happens? Most people panic, they sell, they lock in the loss and step away from the market exactly when they should be buying more, because every dollar invested at the bottom of a crash gets the full ride back up. The investor who kept putting in $100 a month in 2008, mechanically, without looking at the news too carefully, ended up buying shares at a massive discount. By 2013, they were significantly ahead of where they would have been without the crash. This is why the $100 a month framework is not really about the $100. It is about the habit, the automaticity, the removal of the decision from the moment of emotion. When investing is automated and boring and untouched, it tends to work. When it becomes an active, emotionally engaged process, the human brain tends to find ways to wreck it. So here is where we land. $100 a month is not magic. It is not a shortcut. It does not make anyone rich quickly or solve the deeper structural problems in an economy where wages have barely moved relative to costs for decades, where housing is catastrophically expensive, where medical debt is a leading cause of bankruptcy. Those problems are real. They are bigger than personal finance advice. But within the space that one person can actually control, $100 a month, invested consistently, in a boring account, in a boring fund, with automatic contributions and willful inattention, is one of the few mechanisms available to ordinary people that genuinely compounds in their favor. Not their employer's favor, not the bank's favor, not the government's, theirs. The uncomfortable truth is not that $100 a month is secretly a lot of money. The uncomfortable truth is that almost nobody does it. That the gap between knowing this and actually doing it is enormous. That there are people watching this right now who have known this information for years and still have not opened an account. And the question worth sitting with is not, why does compound interest work? The question is, why is knowing not enough? What is the thing between understanding a fact and acting on it? Because whatever that thing is, it is costing a genuinely significant portion of the American population. A genuinely significant amount of money over a genuinely significant portion of their lives. $100 a month. Started today. Not next month when things settle down. Not after the election. Not once the market dips. Not when you feel more ready. Because readiness is not what changes your financial life. Starting is. If this made you think differently about even one thing, go ahead and like this video. It helps more people find it. Share it with someone who keeps saying they will start investing eventually. Drop a comment below with the one thing that is actually stopping you, not the excuse, the real reason. I read them. And if you want more of this, the kind of finance content that skips the hype and goes straight to the uncomfortable mechanics, subscribe. New video coming soon.